Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bill Weld, as Gary has said. I'm a former two-term governor of Massachusetts, and I'm running for Vice President of the United States as the nominee of the Libertarian Party. Before being governor, I worked in this town as a staffer for the U.S. House and for the U.S. Senate, and as an appointee in the U.S. Justice Department under President Reagan. And that was in the days before partisan gridlock gripped the Capitol. People listened to each other. Things got done. Not today. The two-power monopoly of the Republican and Democratic parties has now run the course of all monopolies, becoming arrogant and calcified. They're like an electric utility with a guaranteed rate of return. Hyper-gerrymandering has resulted in extreme partisanhood on both sides of the aisle. The two major parties seem to agree on only one thing: perpetuating their own duopoly. But the duopoly is sick. It's not producing results. It has lost all creativity. No one's listening to anyone. A storm is brewing this year, and it seems possible the Republican Party may even crack in two. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's happened twice before to the Republican Party in times of political ferment. In 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt founded the Bull Moose Party and nearly won the presidency, easily defeating the incumbent President William Howard Taft, but losing to Democrat Woodrow Wilson. In the mid-1850s, the Southern faction of the Whig Party split off to become the Know-Nothing Party, the Know-Nothing Party. That party was driven by three things: anti-immigrant fervor, violent rallies, and conspiracy theories. I kid you not. Sound familiar? The Know-Nothings disappeared in just 3 years, but the other half of the Whig Party, rebranded as the Republican Party, went on to elect Abraham Lincoln President of the United States in 1860. In a number of ways, Gary Johnson reminds me of Abraham Lincoln. For starters, sheer physical strength and endurance. Lincoln's prowess as a rail splitter was legendary. Gary Johnson is a world-class athlete. Not everyone knows this. He has been a contestant in 4 Ironman triathlete world championships. He has climbed the highest mountain peak on each of the world's 7 continents, climbing Mount Everest with a broken leg. When you ask him how he does all that, Gary says, "I just put one foot in front of the other." Again, kind of reminds me of Lincoln, who was a very tall man, was asked, how long should a man's legs be? And he said, long enough to reach the ground. Sounds like Gary. He has Lincoln's homespun wisdom, as well as his discipline and his obvious honesty. Now, if Honest Gary, I kind of hope that sticks, you know? If Honest Gary becomes our president, I can assure you there will be no trimming in the White House, no deception, no flim-flammery, no appeals to the baser angels of our nature. It's just not in him any more than it was in Abraham Lincoln. As Justice Robert Jackson famously wrote, "Great nations, like great men, must keep their word." I wish I did not feel it necessary to say this, but I do. Gary and I believe it is important for the United States of America to keep its word. It is important that our president not abrogate our treaty obligations or blatantly violate our agreements with our trading partners, as one of the major party candidates has proposed. A priceless asset of the United States, which I see all over the world, we are the envy of the world, is that our society and our economy are based on the rule of law. Candidly, Mr. Trump seems to prefer the rule of bullying and bankruptcy. My suggestion to Mr. Trump is tomorrow, instead of taking out The Art of the Deal, his book, and rereading it for the 400th time, take out the United States Constitution and read it for the first time. Just read it once for the first time. This is from the Cato Institute. I've been carrying it around in my pocket for 20 years. In terms of relations with other countries, Gary and I are inclined towards a presumption of non-intervention and restraint where U.S. boots on the ground or blood on foreign soil is concerned. I think we've all seen in recent years that actions to induce regime change can have unseen costs, and they're moral as well as economic, and rippling and unintended consequences. Both the Middle East and North Africa are examples. At the same time, we believe strongly that an invincible defense is a bedrock responsibility of the U.S. government, which requires that America maintain and demonstrate the most powerful military in the world, including air supremacy and naval supremacy. Notably, we are the only candidates on the ballot this year who believe in free international trade in goods and services, again, guided by the rule of law. In terms of people's personal lives, we are tolerant, we are inclusive. 100 million people in the United States have smoked dope. Don't tell us they're all criminals. Just leave that to the states. Similarly, don't tell us that addiction is only a crime and not a public health emergency, which it is. Don't tell us that an 18-year-old can lead an army platoon into battle in Fallujah, but he can't drink a beer. Now, in conclusion, Gary and I have talked about some of the nuts and bolts today that anchor our position as candidates, but I'd like to end by addressing something bigger and more urgent than any single one of those issues, something that may be the most important reason voters really should give Gary Johnson and Bill Weld serious and close consideration. It seems to me that as a nation, the American people have a great big elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about the confused and stumbling Republican elephant, or the tired and overworked Democratic donkey, for that matter. The fact is that both major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are struggling. They're having trouble connecting with the usual and natural goodwill and enthusiasm and support of the American public, because the tectonic plates of our democracy are shifting. We are adapting, as all democracies must, to the push and pull of our evolving citizen body and the innovations of our times. But there is no need for transition and change to be a scary or contentious or angry or violent process, as it unfortunately has seemed to be at several points during the major parties' primaries and threatens to be at their upcoming conventions. The tone of this election season has often seemed to echo that of warfare. People are squaring off and taking aim at each other. Their teeth are set on edge. Their hearts are filled with anxiety and fear and rage. This is not how we should do things in America. John Adams once said, "There never was a democracy yet that didn't commit suicide." Gary Johnson and I refuse to stand by and watch as our beloved democracy turns on itself. We're running because we believe we can embrace change and keep America both safe and sane. We propose to work together as a close team with open hearts and minds, with optimism and calm and intelligence, with transparency, to make sure that every voice is heard and every man, woman, and child in this country gets their fair share of the bounty and opportunity and liberty that are the glory of life in these United States. We believe we really can do this. We hope you voters will give us the chance. Thank you very much.